Hello, everybody. This is Chris Klein with First Team. Thanking all of you for jumping on to today's CE training. We're going to be doing a 1-hour CE class today on real versus fake handbags and Oriental rugs. We've got a fairly large group today, so we'll allow for just another minute or so for everybody to jump on, and then we'll get things underway here. So as far as content goes, we will cover all of this within about 50 minutes or so. Remember that everybody, just because of the size of the group, is muted by default, but we will have a way for all of you to interact and share questions and comments, and to make this as interactive as it can possibly be. So with that, we still have people jumping on, but we're going to go ahead and get started as I have 11:02 Central Time. So we, again, because of the credentialing here, we need to be pretty spot on as it relates to our timing. So let's first introduce our panelists here. And with me on the line today is Doug Davis. And he is my counterpart here at First Team, 16 years restoration experience, national account manager and trainer. In fact, it's Mr. Davis that's created all of our training content. We thank you for that, Doug. And we have about 9 different courses that we offer, all of them available for CE credit. So if you like today's training, or maybe you attended the last one that we did on hoarders, we have more where you not only receive a great education, but you also receive necessary credit. We have Frank Lebrano on with us as well, 33 years of restoration experience, and he is the owner-operator for First Team of Houston and DFW, also a certified CE instructor for 9 courses. I also have Steve Quiring with me, 12 years restoration experience, national account manager, my counterpart here at First Team, also another instructor for the 9 courses that we have. Special note about Steve, he's going to be your rescue guy. We we depend on technology, especially in this day and age, in consideration of everything that we've gone through these last couple of months. So if for some reason the technology isn't working for you, I want you to write down Steve's number. This way, if for some reason you can't see the screen, or if something is not working properly, or you just have an emergency, you can text Steve. Text will be much better than a phone call because of the volume of people that we have. I'm going to read his phone number twice. It's 813-285-2468. Again, that's 813-285-2468. That's Steve Quiring. He will be your rescue guy. So again, firewall issue, problem with the poll question. Sometimes that happens. You can just send Steve a text and he will help you out. So a little bit of housekeeping as it relates to CE and receiving the credit that you're here to get today, in addition to the education. A few things you'll need to know. You must be registered for the webinar individually. So what this means is that when you registered, you received a unique link for this class. And basically, you can't have a group of people huddled around a computer to take this class. You've got to be logged in through your own link, because the software that we have, it tracks attendance that way. It's pretty sophisticated, so it actually monitors how attentive people are and if people are navigating away to check email and that type of thing. So when we pull the attendance report afterwards, we'll need to see that you were here for the full 50 minutes and that you had the presentation up. In addition to that, we've got a couple other things. During the presentation itself, at 2 different random intervals, we're going to share a secret code with you. And this will be essential when you fill out your remote attendance acknowledgement form. You'll not only need to write down your license, your adjuster license, but you'll also need to write down these 2 codes that we're going to share with you. I'll give you a little hint though. When I go silent and you hear that dead air, that's an indication that we have the codes up on the screen. So I'll pause for about 60 seconds when we get to that point, and then that way you'll know the code is up. Write it down because you're going to need it later on. And unfortunately, they don't allow us to share those codes after the fact, so just make sure you catch it the first time around. And if you have an emergency, again, text Steve. So we are offering credit today for Florida, North Carolina, Texas, Oklahoma, and Delaware. We've got a couple reciprocal states up there, so proud to be offering that for our attendees today. After the presentation, by the end of business today, you're going to receive an email from me, and attached to that email is going to be that registration PDF. Fill it out, get it back to us. So there'll be some pretty simple instructions in that email that I send out to you. So fill it out, attach it, and send it back to the email that I put in the email that I send to you. The only request that we have is that no pictures. Please either scan it as a PDF, or if you take it as a picture, just convert it to a PDF before sending it back to that email as an attachment. So again, within 5 days, very, very important. This is what that form looks like. So if you haven't attended one of our classes before, it looks something like this. So again, because of the large group that we have, the best way to kind of interact is going to be through the little chat feature. So you'll see that toolbar there. Use the little chat feature down towards the bottom. Enter in any questions that you have, and Steve and Doug and Frank are going to be monitoring that. And what I found is the best way to address that, usually if we just have a few, we'll do it at the end of the presentation, but depending on the volume of questions that we have, if we have just a ton of them, we will go through it after the training and follow up with you individually. It actually gives us a good reason to follow up with you and just kind of connect and answer any questions that you have. So with that, we'll get right into things. One last kind of thought. I may talk about textiles throughout the course of the presentation. If I do, and if you're not familiar with what that is, this is a good overview. It's not just the clothing in your closet and in your dresser drawers, but it's window coverings and bedspreads, comforters, purses and designer handbags, leathers, suedes and furs, area rugs, which we'll be covering today, wedding gowns, stuffed animals, taxidermy, shoes, and more. So a pretty good comprehensive overview of what textiles refers to. It's a pretty broad category. So let's talk about the course overview here. What we're going to do is we're going to teach you how to identify real handbags from fake handbags. The best thing here, we are moving, I would say that the industry before COVID was moving towards kind of a virtual model, very slowly but surely. And certainly with everything we've been through with COVID, it has kind of taken that and ratcheted it up a few notches. And one of the greatest things about the training today is that you're going to learn how to identify a real from a fake handbag with literally just a picture. So that really lends itself to the virtual adjusting model. And I think that'll be really helpful for a lot of folks that are out there adjusting personal lines claims. So we will also discuss the handbags that are most often counterfeited. We will then transition to rugs, and we're going to talk about the 3 most common types of rugs that you're going to see on your losses. We're going to look at potential repair options, and we'll also discuss when really restoration is not an option and settling on replacement or ACV is going to be your best bet. And then after that, again, we'll take a look at the chat feature and see if it's a manageable number of questions. We'll answer it right then and there. Again, if it's a lot, we will follow up afterwards. So just diving right into things, it's pretty alarming when you look at the numbers. About 70% of all designer handbags that are purchased online are counterfeit. And that means that what you learn today could be very valuable as it relates to settling that claim accurately and paying for what's really owed, not perceived value. And that's really what the obligation for all adjusters is out there. We're going to look at the most replicated bags, which are Louis Vuitton and Coach. By far, those 2 are the most replicated, and it comes as no surprise because they're some of the most expensive handbags out there. So how can you tell if it's real? One of the first things that you're going to look for is you're going to look for something that, well, some people will call it a serial number, but what it's actually called is a production code. And if you can learn how to read these production codes, it can be extremely valuable because it'll not only tell you where it's made, but it will tell you how old it is. And that is very, very important because as it relates to ACV policies and depreciation, that can be a very powerful piece of information. As it relates to the countries that it's made in, they are made in France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Switzerland, and right here in the good old US of A. You will never see a Louis Vuitton handbag made in Asia. So if your insured tells you they've got one and you see a tag that says made in China, well, guess what? Immediate red flag, and you can pretty much qualify that as a fake right out of hand. So let's take a deeper look into how to decipher the production code. So beginning in 1990, in an effort to outsmart the counterfeiters out there, Louis Vuitton began creating production codes. And one of the things that you're going to learn here is that between 1990 and 2006, the second and the fourth number indicate the year that the handbag was made. In addition to that, if you look at the first and third number, that will tell you the month that it's made. And then last but not least, you'll have two letters, and that will correspond to the country where the handbag was made. So here we've got second and fourth is 05, so the handbag was made in 2005. The first and third is a 1 and a 2, so it was made in December of 2005. So what does the Roman numeral represent? Well, that tells us that this handbag was made in France and is very much a real Louis Vuitton handbag. After 2007, in an effort to outsmart the counterfeiters, and it's a big business, the counterfeit business is huge, so it's kind of like a cat and mouse game. Louis Vuitton mixed it up. So one of the things that they didn't change is that the second and the fourth number still represent the year it was made. So this one was made in 2007. But the first and the third number now represent the month. So this one also made in December, as it was made in the 50th month of the year. So this one has a country code of MB, and that corresponds to France. So this particular handbag was made in France in December of 2007. So again, you can get a lot of information from these codes, not just where it was made, but when it was made. And when we look at this one, so let's take a closer look here. So let's say your policyholder provided you with this picture. Well, the first question you would ask is, what is wrong with this? And as you take a closer look at the 5 and the 6, what is that beginning to tell you? Well, either it was made in 1956, which is long before they started using production codes, or it was made in the future. So what does that mean? You guessed it, it is a fake handbag. Let's also look at the country code. So here we have an M4. Do we see M4? No, it's not looking good here. Now, you already knew it was a fake, but you're looking for inconsistencies. So right, again, out of the gate, you know that you don't owe the $1,000 or $2,000 that they may be asking for this, because again, you're in the business of paying what's owed. And you don't want to put yourself in a position where you're having any type of subjective disagreement with the policyholder. You lead with the data and let the data direct where you go with this assignment. So what we're looking at here is the Louis Vuitton Neverfull. And this is by far the most popular line of Louis Vuitton handbags. In fact, when I learned how to teach this class, it ruined me, because now everywhere I look, I see these things. It's amazing. I never gave it a second thought, but again, after learning all of this material, look around and you will see, when you see a Louis Vuitton, so often you'll see these Neverfull handbags, which brand new and real can easily be $2,000 plus. So if you're getting pictures from your insureds, the most important thing is you've got to be able to find the tag. And what this reminds me of is, you know, pictures are extremely important. It's extremely important for all of your service providers to take really, really good pictures out there. And it reminds me that, you know, sometimes you get a lot of quantity, but what you really need is quality. So in directing your policyholder, you need an exterior shot just like this, but you also need to direct them on how to find that tag. So here, it'll be underneath the flap and in the upper right-hand corner. So you've actually got to pull it back pretty hard. You can see it's kind of tucked in right there, and you really got to pull this pretty firmly in order to expose that production code. So remember, we're looking for indiscrepancies. So once you get the flap back and it reveals this code, what are you beginning to think about this handbag? What do you notice about that one? This is going to be a problem. It's elevated and not like the others. This is that indiscrepancy that we're talking about, these inconsistencies, which will tell you, boom, you've got a fake Louis Vuitton, and that's going to change the way you settle this claim. Okay, we're going to leave this slide up for just another minute. I hope you're all paying attention out there. Okay, so moving right along, production tags are usually hidden. So what you're looking at here is a different style, and not all the production tags are in the same place. They can be quite hard to find. So in this case, it's in the pocket. So you've really got to open up that pocket to expose the tag. And when you look at that tag, you're looking for a couple things. You're looking for the thickness of the tag, the quality of the stamp, and that everything is symmetrical and evenly spaced. So as I'm looking at this tag, it's looking good. Made the 42nd week, 2007. Everything looks clean, and SD does correspond to the United States. So it was made right here in the US. So we're looking at a bag that is definitely real. But there is a huge market for these bags online. And one of the things that the only downside of the virtual world that we're in now is we used to do so many of these trainings in person. And with that, you have the benefit of being able to touch and hold these bags. And we love to test everybody in the audience with a sampling of real and a sampling of counterfeit handbags. So when we do that, we have a budget where every year we're able to purchase some new handbags. So in this case, we were doing our shopping, and this was actually back in January of 2008. So I was on eBay and I found one for $275. So that's really cheap for a Louis Vuitton. So that's kind of a red flag. But I will say I have found them secondhand on eBay before at this price. So now I need to verify. And again, keep in mind, it's January of 2018. So I needed this for a class that I was going to run on February the 9th. So as I'm looking at this, I'm looking at estimated delivery on or before Wednesday, February 7th. So I'm thinking so far so good. So now, and I had plenty of replicas, plenty of fake bags for my class. I needed a real one. So, but I'm trying to obviously be mindful of our budget. So now I need to verify if this is real or not. So let's take a look at the hardware. What are you thinking? So far, so good? I think so. The hardware looks right, at least from what you can tell in a picture. The other picture that you're going to want to ask your insureds for is a picture of the bottom. So here we've got what they call the feet, the 4 feet of the bag. Everything looks symmetrical. The stitching looks good. A lot of people will tell you that the icons need to line up. That's not 100% true rule, although it is quite common. But depending on the style of the bag, that may or may not be true. But again, from just a glance from a picture, as I'm looking at this, everything is, I'm not seeing any red flags so far. So I'm thinking I may have found myself a really, really good deal. Next thing we're looking at is the tag. So Louis Vuitton Paris, made in France. Perfectly fine. So now the only thing I need to do is make sure that this tag lines up with the production code. So here is the production code. First thing, let's look at the year. So 2018, yep, looks great. The week, boy. Well, this is starting to be a problem because this is saying that the handbag was made in the middle of February. And remember, I'm looking online in January. So immediately I know my hopes are dashed. It is a fake handbag, not the real deal. But let's run a hypothetical real quick. And let's say that you were looking at this as you're sitting there in January of 2019. Well, then you wouldn't have that to disqualify this bag. What else could you look at that might be a potential problem? You can look at the country code. So here it says FH. Well, that actually does correspond to the United States, which is great. The only problem is the tag that it's made in France. And this is the value of this type of training. You are becoming an expert in how to spot a real from a fake. And this is, as they say, knowledge is power. And any inconsistency like that, being able to spot it, being able to use the data can be very, very powerful. So now let's talk about hardware. When it comes to hardware, it is, when you look at something like this, it may seem, I don't know, not illogical. I'm not finding the right word, but when you see green like that, green is actually good. That is oxidation, and the oxidation is actually something that naturally occurs, and it occurs to actually protect the brass. Much like the same thing happens with copper. So it's much like the Statue of Liberty, which was at one time it looked like pure, and now it's more of a greenish color, just like you see right here in this picture. It's the same concept. The oxidation actually means that the hardware is real. Whereas if you see something like this, look at where the gold plating is coming off. This is absolutely something that you would see on a replica bag. Gold plating that comes off. You got the silver underneath. You'll never find that on a real Louis Vuitton. Looking at other pieces of the hardware, it's all about the weight. If you're going to spend a few thousand on a handbag, it better be perfect, and everything should be high quality. So if the hardware feels hollow and very light, and if you do not see a trademark stamp on the hardware, I'm sorry, but you're insured as a replica handbag. So when we look at this one, this is a bag we picked up a few weeks ago, and the customer was adamant that this was real. So it's a good example of quality pictures, because from the onset, it very much could be a real Louis Vuitton. But as we take a close-up, what we're looking for here, again, is inconsistencies. Notice that the plating is coming off. When you're looking even closer at this, look at the stitching. The knots are different sizes. And in addition to that, they're spaced out unevenly. It's not even close. So you know that this is a replica all day long, just by looking at the details and looking for inconsistencies, just like what you see right here. Looking at something like this, again, it's that same handbag. And let me just add a side note there. The key is, once you spot that first inconsistency, it's not uncommon to find multiple. So that's the thing here. There are so many little details that it is hard for the counterfeiters they're making these bags for cheap. So to have that level of quality control and attention to detail, very, very difficult. And here's another example of a detail that the counterfeiters missed that will allow you to disqualify that handbag in an instant. So as you look at this patch, it's uneven, it's sloppy, and more importantly, the patch should be underneath the lining. The next thing that you look at here, on the leather handle, notice how uneven the leather is above the stitching. Again, we're looking for indiscrepancies. So here, we're looking at a different wallet, and we're looking at the upper left and right hand corner. Notice how the stitching is way off. They're trying to make a triangle, but they were not symmetrical in their approach. It's kind of more of a wavy triangle, and an imperfection that, yes, you can qualify it as a fake pretty quickly here. So again, just little details like that will tell the story. So a lot of times you'll get something like a designer handbag, and you'll say, okay, so you lost a Louis Vuitton. You're saying it's real. Can I have a receipt? And they'll say, oh, no, this was a gift, or I bought it online and I can't find the email receipt. And if you get that type of response, well, then what? Not only are you going to ask them for pictures, but ask if they have any pictures from when they first received the handbag. And believe me, for most people, when they get a brand new Louis Vuitton handbag and they pay all that money, or it was a gift and it was that expensive, that's a big deal. And a lot of times people are taking pictures and people are posting it on social media, because for a lot of people, this is a status symbol. So that would be one of the first things you'd want to ask for. And another thing, if you see something like this and you see plastic on the handle, you've got them, because they don't ever put plastic on real leather. A Louis Vuitton handbag, and really any designer handbag for that matter, the designers are going to use tissue or cloth. So just the details that you want to look for. So here we're going to launch a poll question. So just bear with me right here. Again, sometimes these poll questions can be a little finicky. So here is your first poll question. We're going to launch it. And I'm going to ask, perfect, it looks like it launched correctly. Steve, can you see the poll question? Is it up on the screen? Does it look good for you? All right, excellent. Excellent, and I can see the votes coming in. And Christina, I see that you had asked a question a little bit ago. Thank you for that. Christina asked, again, as you're doing the codes or the poll question, she asks, how can we obtain the location codes? And that's a great question. So here's what we're going to do. I will send out, in addition to the remote acknowledgement form that I send out, I will also attach the cheat sheet. And this cheat sheet is something that you should save to your desktop, a folder, wherever you want to put it, but it'll have a quick and easy rundown of everything that you see, everything that you learned today regarding designer handbags will be in that cheat sheet. So very, very helpful and valuable. Let me see here. Looks like we've got 95%. Okay, perfect. All right, great. Well, just allow the poll to be up for just another couple seconds before I close it. If you haven't voted, go ahead and vote right now. Going once, going twice, going thrice. Let's close that out. Okay, perfect. And 95% of you had the correct answer. So thank you for that. Let's continue now. Moving on to a different type of handbag that is commonly replicated and counterfeited and can also be very, very expensive, and those are Coach handbags. So if you think about Louis Vuitton, they use the production code. Coach calls it something different. They call it the Coach Creed, and that is what you're going to be looking for here. So a few things you're going to look for. Can you read every word? You're going to look for misspellings. You're going to look for the month that it's made, and that's going to come after the number. Now, I want you to think about something here. You see how it's a capital N and then an elevated little o with a hyphen underneath. Couple things to look for. That O, at little o, and the hyphen will always be raised. They'll always be off that kind of bottom row. If it's anything other than that, you can discount the bag out of hand. It's a fake. And the other thing that you're going to look for, so on the Coach Creed, on that serial number down at the bottom, you're going to have an alphabetical number. So that's A through M is going to indicate the month. So A being January, B being February, and so on and so forth. But there is one exception. They do not use the letter I. So they skip that. So that's something that's very important to keep in mind. Again, it will be on your cheat sheet, but just remember that they don't use the letter I. The other thing, after the letter, you're going to have two numbers, and the number is going to correspond to the year that it was made. So in this case, this was a handbag made in January of 2014. Very much a real Coach handbag. And then the last thing that you might see is the letter F, and that means that this Coach bag was made for a factory outlet. And we see that all over the place. It's a great place to get a real Coach handbag. And I want to mention something about that. There is a misconception out there that Coach bags purchased at a factory outlet store are, for lack of a better word, inferior to those purchased at a traditional retail outlet, and that's not necessarily true. And the reason for that is that it's the same high quality handbag, same high quality attention to detail. What they've done, though, is they've cut out the middleman. So Coach doesn't have to pay Macy's for shelf space. So that's really the only difference. The quality is right on par with anything else you'd find anywhere else. It's just a different model because they're not paying for shelf space. Okay, so moving right along, this is a great example of a real Coach bag, but let's take a look at this one here. So look at the O and look at the hyphen underneath it. This is, again, it's a fake, and you know it in an instant because that is something you'll never see on a real Coach handbag. It's a big O and a big hyphen, and it's all centered on that bottom line, on that main bottom line, which again is immediately, it can be identified as a fake. But even more, again, remember how I mentioned before, if you spot one inconsistency, it's not uncommon to spot more than one. So here you have a U. So where you should have had the year, or I'm sorry, the U will represent the month it was made. There is no U. So again, another example that it's a fake. And then after that, you have more number or lettering when in fact you should have the year. So last but not least, if you didn't have enough evidence that this was a fake, if you look at the lining, you'll see the Coach emblem on the inside and the outside of the lining. Coach does not do that. It'll be either the lining on the outside and then a solid color on the inside lining of that pocket, or vice versa. You'll never, never, never have both. So something else to look for on a fake Coach handbag. So again, cat and mouse game with the counterfeiters here. What Coach did in 2014 is they changed the creed, meaning that they did not always, they were not from that point forward, not always going to display it as a heat stamped patch. So now they may also use a tag, but you're going to read it the exact same way. So look at the F. What does that represent? That represents the fact that this Coach handbag was made in June. And then the 14, very straightforward, was made in 2014. So fair enough. And this is something that you'll find on real Coach handbags made after 2014. And then again, remember the F down there means that it was made for a factory outlet. Okay, let's take a look at this Coach creed here. What is the problem? So without even looking at the serial number, what stands out to you? Well, if we look at this section here, the finest, all one word, I don't think so. You will not have run-on words like that. In addition to that, you've got another major run-in word here where it's materials trimmed. And as I was studying this, I had to read that a few times to get it, but these are imperfections that you'll never find on a Coach handbag. So is it fake? You better believe it. Other details to look at. So on the left, we have a fake Coach handbag. On the right, we have a real Coach handbag. What's the difference and how can you tell? As the expression goes, the devil is in the details. So all you have to do in this case is look at the A. Coach, the A on the Coach name will always have a peak at the apex of that letter. Unlike the fake Coach bag on the left-hand side, where the A basically has a flat top. They just won't use that font style, and you know right away that it's a fake Coach handbag. Another blatant example of a fake, and I apologize for the picture being a little bit blurry here, but look at the misalignment. This is a level of sloppiness that is immediately a red flag to tell you that it's not real. Let's look at this here. So again, they're very proud of their logo, very proud of their emblem. As you look at the horse and carriage, it should be perfectly aligned. And the example on the left, that's a real Coach handbag. The example on the right, that's a fake all day long. If you look at the example on the right, the horse's hind legs are off the ground. The other immediate identifier is that on the whip crosses over itself, whereas on the right-hand side, it just forms a big loop. So again, looking at a detail like this, that will tell you right away whether it's real or fake. Looking at some other details on Coach handbags, they use a third-party provider for their zippers, and that is the YKK company. So you'll see that on, it's hard to find, but you'll see it on the zipper itself, either on the side like that, or you'll see it on the top like that. So that's just something to look for. Again, when you add all of these together, if you have continuity, very, very good chance it's real. Any inconsistencies, it's fake. So right there again, YKK, yeah, that's another indicator that everything is adding up. All right, well, I've got good news for you. You have made it through the handbag portion of the training, and we're now going to transition to rugs. And this is another item that you're going to find on so many losses out there. In fact, 64% of households will have an area rug. And it really comes down to being able to identify the 3 most common types. And after this training, you'll be able to tell not only what the 3 most common types are, but you'll know what drives the value, which are worth a shot at restoration, what rug should I consider an appraisal on. So from the top of the rug, they all look very similar. And that does not tell you, that tells you very, very little. The reality is, to get the story of the rug, everything you need to know is on the bottom. So for the machine-made rug, you'll know that's a machine-made rug when you flip it over and you see that rough, scratchy glue that is used for the bottom side of that rug. Because they're machine-made, they're made very, very quickly, very, very not labor-intensive at all. So these are can be very affordable rugs. The next one is your hand-tufted. How do you know that you're working with a hand-tufted? Well, with these, they use a canvas covering to hide all of that glue. So they'll have that canvas covering on, and then they'll use another kind of canvas edge to form the perimeter going all the way around that rug. And then last but not least, you have the hand knotted rug. And when you flip these over, and these are by far the most expensive rugs out there, when you flip them over, it's almost a mirror image of what you have on the top. Okay, a very interesting kind of comment on hand knotted rugs. So when we were talking about designer handbags, we are looking for perfection. And what's interesting here is that that's not the case with hand knotted rugs. In fact, with hand knotted rugs, we don't want them to be perfect, and we actually want imperfections. And you'll see why that's the case a little bit later in the training here. But that is part of the nature of these hand knotted rugs, because they are made by a human being painstakingly over hours and hours and hours. And with that, you're going to have human error, and with human error comes slight imperfections. So let's talk about Persian rugs for a minute. I always ask the class, where do Persian rugs come from? And you get a variety of answers, and the incorrect answer is Persia. No, they don't come from Persia, because Persian rugs come from Iran. So what's interesting about this is that Persian rugs, when people look at the pattern of a Persian rug, it's actually an Oriental style. So if you think of a Persian rug kind of like a brand, kind of like Kleenex, somebody might ask for a Kleenex, and when they say that, they're speaking to a specific brand, but what they're actually asking for is tissue. And it's the same thing where you may have somebody that says, I've got a Persian rug, when in actuality, it's not a rug that was made in Iran, but it's an Oriental rug. And it still may be a hand-knotted rug, and it still may be very, very expensive, but not all Oriental rugs are Persian rugs. So something to consider about Persian rugs is, one of the reasons there's such a perceived value for Persian rugs is that since the 1970s, we've had 3 different sanctions or embargoes with Iran. And as a result of that, that has limited the supply. So it goes back to simple economics where it's supply and demand, much like Cuban cigars there's a perceived value, or maybe cigars from the Dominican Republic are just as good. I don't know, but there is a perceived value because of the scarcity of these items. So that is something that may lead to the perceived value, but really, when it comes down to the true value, that is a different story. Again, so much of it goes to you're paying for like, kind, and quality, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment here. But again, just keep in mind that in order to be a true Persian rug, it must have been made in Iran. All right, it's time for another poll question. Let me go ahead and launch this. And Steve, once I get this up, I want you to tell me that you're seeing it correctly on your screen. Okay, I've launched it. For all of you out there, Steve, do you see it?
Yep, you're all set.
Okay, excellent, excellent. All right, so remember to vote on that poll. And let's see if we've got any. Now, this is a great chance for me to look at some of the questions that have come through. Kelly, Shannon, I see you had some challenge with the poll. Don't worry about it. Again, the most important thing is that you have the presentation up and that you write down our secret codes when I go silent. So those are some of the questions. Again, keep answering the poll questions there. Let me go back to my poll and see how we're doing here. 65% of you have voted. 88% of you have the correct answers, so very good. So I'm going to go ahead and close this poll in 10 seconds. So get your last minute voting in. And let's go ahead and close the poll. I'm actually going to do something I haven't tried before. I'm going to try to share the results here. So Steve, are you seeing the result of the poll up on the screen?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, now I'm going to try to hide that. So if you're seeing that, you'll see 88% of people got the correct answer on the poll. They are made, all Persian rugs are made in Iran, so very good for you. Excellent. So let's talk about machine-made rugs. So again, when we look at a rug, we're going to flip it over, look at the bottom side of the rug. You're going to want to note the uniformity of the stitching. You can't see a clear pattern on the back. It sounds like plastic when it's scratched, and it will not roll up easily. In fact, when you roll it up, it rolls up like a sleeping bag. But because it's synthetic fibers, these things are tough and very durable. So in anything we do when it comes to restoration, we want to look at the replacement cost, and we want to measure that against the restoration cost. So if the value of the rug justifies the cost of restoration, we have a very high success rate restoring these types of rugs. So that's the really good news about machine-made rugs. And now that you've taken this class, you know what to look for. Now, there is a curveball out there, and those are Keristan rugs. And this is one exception. It may look like a hand-knotted rug, and when you flip it over, you will see a mirror image. But these are made by Keristan, and they are very proud of the work that they do. So you will see that Keristan tag on the bottom of these. And the information is very, very easy to look up online. And in addition to that, we have a very high success rate with restoration on these types of rugs. So that's just kind of the curveball to look for out there. So from time to time, you may see a Keristan rug, and they are, as they brand themselves, the Wonder Rug of America. They are made here in the good old US of A. So let's talk about hand-tufted rugs. This is one exception that you might find is that, well, again, the way you identify the hand-tufted rug is by flipping it over. You'll look for that canvas that kind of covers the glue on the that they use to kind of hold everything in place, and then they'll use that canvas fringe that runs around the perimeter, so it has a really nice look to it. So that is your giveaway. Sometimes they'll change it up a little bit, so you'll see something like this where it has a mesh backing. They'll use a clear glue, You'll also notice the fringe up top, but this fringe is actually sewn on. So hand knotted rugs, they'd never have it sewn on, because on a hand knotted rug, the fringe is actually a part of the foundation. So that's something very, very important to look for. But hand tufted rugs can actually be pretty pricey, and that's because there's a fair amount of labor involved. So here is a woman making a hand tufted rug. She uses a machine that looks like a drill, and she shoots a U-shaped fiber into the pattern. And this is much like how you would approach giving someone a tattoo. And a rug like this that you see right here would take about 3 days to make. And again, there's labor involved, and that's why they're more expensive than the machine-made rugs that are out there. They apply a latex to the bottom, a latex glue to the bottom of a hand-tufted rug, and that is designed to hold these U-shaped fibers in place. So they will pour that on, it'll hold the fibers in place, and then they'll put the backing on there to make it look pretty. One of the problems that they found with that, though, is that if that's the only thing that they do, a lot of times the rug will not lay properly. So they will actually add concrete and marble dust to that latex glue to add some weight to it and use it as a stabilizer to help the rug lay flat. Here's the bad news. If that gets wet, so on our water losses out there, concrete does not mix with water. So your chances of restoration in that case, very, very minimal. So that's something to keep in mind, a very low probability of restoration. Let's move on to hand knotted rugs. So again, here we have 3 women making this hand tufted rug. Going from left to right, you've got the foundation or the warp, as you might see it called on an appraisal. Going from bottom to top, you've got the weave or the weft, as it might be listed on an appraisal. Look at the painstaking process that's involved here. So on each one of the strands that run the length of the foundation, that is the weave, over and under, again and again and again. And the length of that fiber, how close they choose to cut it, that'll actually determine the length of the pile or the thickness of the rug. But what's crazy is when you look at this, 3 women will work 3 months to make a rug like this. So what are you paying for? You're paying for labor. And that's what makes these rugs so, so expensive. So something else to consider as it relates to the value of the rugs is that the fabric that's used and the number of colors will have a big impact on price. Some rugs may be so expensive that you may, and this is more for underwriters out there, but you may have a separate endorsement for that particular rug. If this rug was made out of silk, which we see sometimes, it could be tens of thousands of dollars. So it may sound crazy to spend that much on a rug, but it is something that we see from time to time. Let's talk about repair. It can be done. If it's a repair on the weave, that would be a best case scenario because they're usually smaller sections. So you're going to look at that, and that may be something that you would consider, again, based on the replacement costs. But, it's just using that over-under approach on the foundation. On the flip side of that, if you have damage on the foundation, this is a much, much bigger problem because it can be, these strands run all the way through the rug, and it can be much more expensive when you have damage to that foundation. So what you'll really need to do in this case is look at replacement cost and make a determination. Again, engage us, allow us to help. We have the resources out there. A good textile restoration service provider will have the resources in your local market to help with the decision-making process on all of this. So again, just some things to consider. I'm going to leave this slide up for another 10 seconds, and then we're going to move on. I appreciate you all hanging in there. We're at the tail end here, so you've made it this far. We're at the home stretch. So moving to the next slide in 3, 2, 1. Now let's talk about color bleed. Something very, very important with rugs is especially on a water loss, do not move them. Make sure the other service providers involved on that claim do not move them. If they are moved, or even worse, rolled up, that can create color bleed. And depending on the color, sometimes we can reverse that. But if it's something like a red, that could be a problem. So again, if rugs on a loss, leave them be, let the experts deal with it, because you never want to have a situation where you took something that was restorable and it made sense to restore. It was important to the policyholder, but now because of someone's actions out there, it's put it on the non-restorable list. So just something to keep in mind. As it relates to other damage, you might have something that's pre-existing. Again, your service providers out there are going to know what to look for, but now you know what to look for as well. Again, pictures, quality pictures are going to help you understand what's going on. Is it related to the fire or water loss, or is it from moths or carpet beetles? And look, in this case, the moths are eating the wool, but not the foundation. Sometimes you might have dots that are coming up through the top. Again, if this is a very expensive hand-knotted rug, this may be something that the policyholder might point out, but this could just be normal wear and tear. You think about where these exist, they exist on the floor. These rugs are going to take a little bit of a beating depending on the age, and this can actually be corrected. In this particular case, these just need to be pushed right back down, back into the foundation. So that's something that can definitely be done on this. So speaking about appraisals, it may be something that you would want to consider. They typically cost a few $100s, but again, if you're dealing with a rug that's several $1,000s, that might make sense to get a professional appraisal. Just keep in mind that if one has been done before, you want to look at when it was done, because they're only good for 2 years. So that's something that you definitely want to keep in mind. One of the things that's really going to drive the value of a hand-knotted rug are the knots per square inch. The more knots per square inch, the more valuable the rug is. Another price driver is going to be the country that the rug comes from, and then of course the age and condition. And when it comes to replacement cost, it's all about what is it worth in today's market, not what they paid for it years ago. What is it worth today? So in summary, use the production code dates and the brand hardware to identify imperfections and help verify authenticity. This is for your handbags that we covered at the beginning of the training today. If you can decipher the production code, you can get the correct depreciation on that handbag if it's not restorable. For rugs, flip them over to get a better understanding of the type of rug that you're dealing with. And rug triage must be performed quickly and correctly to avoid secondary or permanent damage. So all of these things are just good things to keep in mind as it relates to designer handbags and rugs. I must say, I'm pretty impressed with our timing. Up on my screen, I see 59 seconds and 17 seconds. So I think the CE Credentialing Bureau would be proud of us because we stuck to our time today. I will, in looking at the questions that we have in our polling area, it looks like it's pretty extensive. So I'll go through that after the presentation and follow up with you individually on that. Just remember that to get credit for today, you've got to fill out that remote acknowledgement form with your adjuster's license and the 2 codes that we shared during today's presentation. We've got a 5-day limit to get that to the Credentialing Bureau, so please fill it out, get it back to me as quickly as possible. So with that, I thank you all for your time today. Thank you for learning something new with me. And thank you for hanging out to get your credit today. Again, I'm Chris Klein. My phone number's up on the screen, my email as well. This presentation was specifically for Allstate and Encompass, and I'm the national account manager for all of you out there. So I do hope you keep my information handy, because I am here to support all of us as it relates to the work that we do together on the program. You'll see Doug's contact info up there, and Steve's as well. Those guys are my peers and my friends, so you can certainly reach out to them as well. So thank you, everybody, for your time. I appreciate it, and I hope you all have a wonderful day out there.